Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1210 of the Juicebox Podcast. Jessica was 7 years old when she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Today, she's a 30-year-old tattoo artist who you can find at Jess Fox Tattoos on Instagram. Today, Jess and I talk about growing up with type 1 diabetes, and we spend quite a little bit of time discussing the problems that she had, feeling like she belonged. Guys, you got to hurry up. My offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at CozyEarth.com is at 40%, but just until June when it drops to 30%. Get your stuff now. CozyEarth.com. Use the offer code JUICEBOX to save something. Depends on when you hear this. When you place your first order for AG1 with my link, you'll get 5 free travel packs and a free year's supply of vitamin D. Drink AG1.com/juicebox. If you or your child have type 1 diabetes, please go to t1dexchange.org/juicebox and complete the survey. This survey will take you about 10 minutes and it will support type 1 diabetes research. It also may benefit you. It's definitely going to benefit me. So go fill out that survey completely at t1dexchange.org/juicebox. Let's move everything forward. And don't forget to check out the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Touched by Type 1, a fantastic organization who is helping people with type 1 diabetes. And very soon, their in-person event will happen with me. I'll be one of the keynote speakers at Touched by Type 1. Go to their website, touchedbytype1.org, go to the programs tab, and get yourself those free tickets. I'll see you in Orlando. You can use the same continuous glucose monitor that Arden uses. All you have to do is go to Dexcom.com/juicebox and get started today. That's right, the Dexcom G7 is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing people together to redefine what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jalen. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14. He's 29 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. And then later at the end of this episode, you can hear my entire conversation with Jalen. To hear more stories with Medtronic Champions, go to medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or search the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform.
My name is Jessica Fox, and I am a tattoo artist out of Buffalo, New York. And I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 7 years old, and I'm 30 now, so a little over maybe 20 years at this point.
Jessica, it's 23 years, but that's neither here nor there.
Thank you.
And don't worry, because you paused, and I was like, is she not doing the math? Or I wasn't sure what was happening. Also, do you care about football or no?
No.
Good. And I won't tease you about what the Bills did last night.
Oh, yes, I heard.
I don't care about the Bills, and I was horrified by what happened. So,
yes.
You're a tattoo artist.
Yes.
How do you become a tattoo artist?
Yeah, so everyone's journey is a little bit different. You know, it depends on, I guess, where you're living. For me, I had a formal apprenticeship. I did that for about 2 years under the supervision of someone. So basically, I kind of went around from shop to shop. I was just looking for an opportunity to just help out, sweep floors, and, you know, just be involved in the community. And then finally found someone to teach me. You kind of start off basically on fruits and melons and stuff like that. And then eventually human beings.
What kind of melons?
Literally all kinds, grapefruits, melon, anything really that kind of just can, like, you know, replicate the skin essentially. So you can learn how to like pull straight lines and all that kind of stuff. So
are you actually using color when you're practicing?
No, it's more so just to kind of build like muscle memory and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can use color, but you want to use that on like maybe some of the like, they have like silicone fake skin you can buy, and that stuff will actually like hold color.
Oh, so you can actually see yourself doing it. Because it's a hell of a leap, right? Like if you're learning to like do life drawing or something like that, you just throw away paper if you mess up. But like, do you have friends who let you practice on them?
Yeah. So usually like your first tattoo and you have like a formal apprenticeships either like on yourself or your family or your tattoo mentor. My tattoo mentor was definitely unlucky enough.
Did you not do a good job?
I don't think I did. No, definitely not. I needed some more time in the in the grapefruits, I think. So,
How long have you actually been doing it professionally?
so this is my 7th year. It'll be 8 years in February.
Is it a thing that you notice yourself constantly getting better at, or did you plateau and you're like, I'm good at it and this is what happens every time I do it?
Yeah, definitely not. I think that it's something that like constantly has to be like tended to. I feel like I'm always going to school where I'm like, okay, I have to go attend a seminar, or I have to go kind of do a guest spot to just really like seek out some more information and work next to people. So it's just definitely like a slow burn, and it feels just like a lot of studying and seeing how other people do things and try to wrap your mind around if that'll help like the way you do it.
No, it's interesting. Have you ever like been doing a tattoo? What doing is doing the right word?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're doing a tattoo. I was like, there might be another word there. And you fucked up and you know it. You feel it in your heart. You're like, oh, I did. That's not the right thing to do. What do you do when that happens?
Yeah. Yeah. So like they teach us like, a good tattoo artist knows how to hide their mistakes. It's really we think of it, and maybe clients think of it this way too, that it's like such this permanent thing. And it is, obviously, you can't finish a tattoo and erase it, but it's a lot less permanent than people think. So for example, if I'm lining a letter and I accidentally maybe go a little bit outside, I'm going to be able to maybe go through and make everything just like a hair thicker, where to the like regular client's eye, they might not be able to notice that, but like I'm going to notice that.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise it's going to just stick out like a sore thumb. I mean, there's certainly been times, just historically speaking, with people who've, just really bombed it. And you're just like, yeah, that person shouldn't even maybe be tattooing just yet. Like they need to learn how to draw a little bit more. That should have never became a tattoo.
Right.
There's like definitely an interesting pipeline too between like the art that gets like created on paper and then like what's possible in the skin.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for an experienced tattoo artist, even before the tattoo hits the skin, to have those conversations with the clients, just so there's realistic expectations, so they can both be met on both ends.
Yeah. What do you do when someone comes in and asks for something that you just think I don't want to do this? Like it's weird, it's ugly, but it's not your opinion that matters, right?
Right. Yeah. I really try to come from a place where people will come to me for the art that I put out there. So like I mostly specialize in a lot of like illustrative black work and black and gray, like, style tattooing. So sometimes, for example, I'll have someone come in and they're like, hey, I want like a full color portrait. And I'm like, I'm sure you do, but maybe not from me, because it's just, I'm not really great at it. That's not what I specialize in.
Okay.
So I try to, show them examples of my work and then see if I'm like really the right fit for them. And if I'm not, then I'll try and kind of push them to the person who is in the area.
Yeah.
And I think a huge part of it too is like, there's definitely different calibers of people who do tattoos. You can definitely walk into any shop anywhere in the United States and get quite literally, a name or a date. So I try to work from like a position of where I'm like, okay, like let's create a mood or a story, or like you want to like a memorial tattoo, for example. Like how can I, really honor this person who is so important to you? What were some of their favorite things? So kind of just like reaching out to grasp a little bit more. And that kind of opens the door of possibilities in a way that maybe like someone wasn't thinking about before. So
Right.
I'm typically pretty good at that part. Like it's almost like a consultation that I'll have with the client, where if they don't have like a super creative idea, I can be like, hey, like that idea sounds good, but like, what if, we did this, or this?
And let them work through it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So here's a question. Do you have a style, or are you mimicking tattoo styles? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have a style. Yeah. Although the blanket terms of these styles could be like, yeah, like illustrative or black work or neo-traditional. I think that what I do, like, it looks like I drew it. Whereas like, someone could come to me and just be like, hey, I just want like a name in this type of font. And that's not really going to have my, like, I guess, like artistic identity, like
Right.
thumbprint attached to it. But I guess it just definitely depends on like, what you're getting from me. I'm no stranger to like doing that kind of stuff too. A lot of the beginning of my career, I've done like a lot of the like, they call it like walk-in style tattoos where, someone comes in for a date or a name or just something real small like a heart.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've just been able to kind of, produce those tattoos and, not really stray from exactly what they were looking for. So
You just made me do something I have never done before. So I have a few tattoos, and
Yeah.
I got my first one when I was 19. I'm 52. So 29, 39, 49. My first tattoo was 33 years old. That's crazy. When I got it done by this guy who, is very famous in the area around Philadelphia where I grew up. And he was already he wasn't older, but he was older than me. You know what I mean? Like he was 30 at least. And I just looked, and not only does he still work, but the place is still there. And the people that he worked with when I was there are still there. Is that uncommon?
No, not at all.
No?
Yeah. I think it comes from a place of usually these reputable studios, especially the one, like you said, is a reputable place. Guy's got a really great name for himself. Usually those people, they're going to stick around, and, that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
I think tattooing is one of those jobs where it is definitely a bit more accessible now. But I think when I first started, in retrospect, is not that long ago, it was still really hard to get into. Now there's a lot more information out there, but the people who were taught, it was like they knew, and that stayed within that circle.
Yeah. Is it a tight community? Like, is there a world where I mention this guy's name and you could be like, I know of him, or does it not travel from state to state like that?
Oh no, yeah, it definitely travels. I feel like we all know each other if you are, especially someone from a reputable place. And yeah, it's a pretty tight knit community. Like I said, it's definitely more accessible now. Like there's more shops obviously now than there ever has been, which I think is like a really awesome thing. But the people who've been here for a really long time, they're still doing it.
Yeah.
That there's a reason for that. And that's really awesome as well. So yeah, I probably know the person you're talking about.
It's so funny because I just thought now to say who it was. And then I thought, oh, I don't want to do that. Because you know how when you, suggest a movie or a TV show to somebody, and then they come back to you a week later and they go, yo, thanks a lot. I hated that movie. I spent all weekend there and it cost me $25, and like, you have terrible taste in movies. I would be mortified if I said my tattoo artist's name out loud and you went and got a tattoo from him. And then later we're like, this sucks. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Oh, I know. Yep. Yeah. You never know. I totally get it. So
yeah, I'd be very afraid to say, isn't that funny? I say a lot of stuff. By the way, I say a lot of stuff without thinking on this podcast. After I say it, I think I should probably cut that out. I never do. And this one thing, I was like, I don't think I'm going to tell anybody this.
That's totally fair.
Weird thing. I'll tell you afterwards. I'm not telling these people. Then they're going to go get a tattoo and be pissed at me. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep.
He's also an older guy, so his style is more classic, maybe, I guess. I don't know how they're broken down, but like, it doesn't look like his tattoos don't look like they have like, I don't know, texture. Like, by the way, how did they do that even? Like, that's insane when you see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's so different now, especially just viewing the last maybe like I said, I've been here now for 7 years. I've been getting tattooed at least for 10. Just seeing the technology differences, there's wireless pens and, we're no longer using like those like screaming loud coil machines. Some of us are, of course. But yeah, someone who's got like a more, classic style to them, American traditional, all of that kind of stuff. They might be using that kind of stuff just to get that same result. But I think.
This episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox. And now we're going to hear from Medtronic champion, Jalen.
I was going straight into high school. So it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult?
Unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school. I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling over an hour to the nearest endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college, it's all I see. You know, you can easily search Medtronic Champions. You see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that motivates me. I started embracing more, how I live with type 1 diabetes.
To hear Jalen's entire conversation, stay till the very end. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox to hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community. The Dexcom G7 is sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast, and it features a lightning fast 30-minute warm-up time. That's right. From the time you put on the Dexcom G7 till the time you're getting readings, 30 minutes. That's pretty great. It also has a 12-hour grace period, so you can swap your sensor when it's convenient for you. All of that on top of it being small, accurate, incredibly wearable, and light. These things, in my opinion, make the Dexcom G7 a no-brainer. The Dexcom G7 comes with way more than just this. Up to 10 people can follow you. You can use it with type 1, type 2, or gestational diabetes. It's covered by all sorts of insurances. And this might be the best part. It might be the best part. Alerts and alarms that are customizable so that you can be alerted at the levels that make sense to you. Dexcom.com/juicebox. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to Dexcom and all the sponsors. When you use my links, you're supporting the production of the podcast and helping to keep it free and plentiful.
There are so many different styles of tattoos right now, and stuff growing every single day. I think there's going to be even more styles by the next 5 years. And the stuff that's possible now compared to what it was in maybe like the early 2000s and even like the 90s is just like astronomically different. It's almost like oil painting. I'm like, how did they make it look so real? And it's in a living, breathing human being.
Yeah, I'm always stunned.
It's crazy.
I'm stunned by how well they look, how the tools have come along and the artistry. And I'm also stunned by how sometimes I'll see my tattoos in a mirror and they'll startle me.
Yeah.
Because I forget that I have them, which is actually has happened to me once for sure. Like where I actually swatted at my shoulder. Like I thought there was something. I was like, what the hell? And that was just, there's a giant tattoo on my shoulder that I somehow forgot I had. And the reason I have more than one is because I initially got one on the side of my calf. And one day toweling off after a shower, it gave me this weird feeling that it was floating and disconnected. So yeah. I put more stuff with it and attached it to itself in a ring because I don't know, like that was actually my artistic thought was, I don't know how artistic it was, but like it visually looked wrong to me for this just one thing to be there like that.
Yeah, definitely. That's I feel like that's a totally common thing. I hear that often, or I'll hear people who want to like make everything perfectly symmetrical. So not too far fetched.
And now I'm like, it's funny. I'm not embarrassed by my tattoos, but they are definitely indicative of how old I was when I got them and what was popular at the time and like all that stuff. It's interesting.
Yeah.
You know how you look at somebody who's like 75 years old and you're like, they have Popeye on their arm. How did that happen? Like, how did they not know not to do that? And now I look at my tattoo and I think, oh, that is definitely what someone thinks when they look at mine.
Yeah, they're like little I don't know, timestamps of little things that like meant something to you at that time, or a moment in time that like felt really great, or whatever it can mean to anybody. But you're preaching to the choir here. I have lots of tattoos from different times, and I started getting tattooed. I had a fake ID, and instead of like going to the bar, I would like go to tattoo shops and I would like try to get tattooed at like 16 and 17. And the legal age here is 18. And all of those tattoos, I will confidently say I absolutely have either gotten covered up or removed because I'm just like, yeah, those weren't great ideas.
Not good at all. Wow. Your parents must have been thrilled. And by the way, this is what happens in Buffalo. It's freezing and there's nothing to do, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
Sex or get a tattoo, I guess, are pretty much your options.
Uh-huh.
So I guess for people who don't know, I have Calvin and Hobbes on my right leg. So,
That's amazing.
oh my God. It started off with just the cover of if people know the books, the Babysitters Club. The two of them are just standing together looking mischievous, like next to each other. But I also have Spaceman Spiff, and when he's the giant, and when he gets in the time machine, which is really just a cardboard box, and a couple of other things all like spun together. I basically took the popularity at the time of tribal tattoos and did it with this instead, and just put like a ring. And honestly, it looks old now. Like I should probably either get my leg cut off or have it colored or something like that. I don't know exactly what to do. But anyway.
You should just leave it. Yeah, you should leave it, because I feel like you're going to look back at that and be like, remember when I did that really silly thing?
I remember two things about getting a tattoo. one of them was my mom telling me that it would never come off after I got it. I said, yeah. And I remember saying to her, oh, thank you. I wasn't certain of that. That was my sarcastic reply when I was 19.
Yes.
And when my kids talk about getting tattoos, I'm oddly against it.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like it's a rarity now to not have tattoos. I feel like everyone has at least one or one small one. And I'm like, I think it's so cool when I come across someone who's like, I've actually never had a tattoo. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Jessica, let's offend people for a second.
Sure.
What's the difference? And if I'm wrong, then you'll just tell me I don't see it this way, Scott. But what's the difference between someone who just wants to get a tattoo and somebody who's making a tattoo part of an aesthetic or a look?
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone. You know, while some people think it's like, so for example, I'll tattoo people all the time who are like, I'm never going to get anything on me unless it means something to me. Mm-hmm. And I can totally respect that. And then there's the total opposite side of the spectrum where people are like, I'm really uncomfortable in my body and I want to get this tattoo to maybe like have me like this space. There's definitely a common misconception, for example, with people who have like even I've done this, like people who carry like some extra weight like on their stomach and they're like, like I don't want to get my stomach tattooed unless it's like flat or like washboard abs. And I'm like, nah, like maybe if you got a tattoo on the spot, like you like an image that you really like, it might bring you some peace in how you feel, or kind of like rebrand it for yourself. And it almost comes from like a similar maybe to like a body modification, or like people who will go and get like to a medical spa and like get something like that done. So it's definitely just in the sense of like, it depends on what someone's looking to get out of it,
I might call your episode Rebrand Your Belly. That's
exactly
kind of brilliant. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we've talked about this more than we should have. I'm sorry. Diabetes when you were 7. Are there other people in your family who have type 1 or other autoimmune issues?
Yeah. So no other autoimmune issues, but my aunt on my dad's side is also type 1, but she didn't get hers until a little bit later in life.
Okay. In like her 30s or 40s, 50s?
Yep. Yeah. 30s.
30s. Okay. So you're the only one younger. Did she get it before you, or did you get it first?
Yeah, she got it before me. I think it was even before I got mine. So I grew up kind of knowing, I spent a lot of time with her. So I grew up knowing a little bit into that world.
It's interesting. So when you were diagnosed, you immediately were like, oh, that's what my aunt has.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand it because I was 7, I think, at the time. So it was like very confusing to me. I remember going right into the doctor's office with my parents. I had the same, song and dance that everyone kind of has gone through, of like really thirsty, sleeping a lot, something was wrong, losing some weight, and then going to the doctor, getting that news of having to, go to the hospital, that kind of whole situation. So I didn't understand it. And I was like, seeing my parents' reaction, I was like, oh no, something is wrong.
Yeah.
So
your dad was probably like, oh, my sister's fault. This is my sister's fault.
Yeah, right.
She did this. But no other autoimmune stuff.
No, yeah. And surprisingly, like, I'm very blessed to have like everyone else in my family is like, we have a really, really great bill of health. And I'm grateful for that. But yeah, so when reality kind of set in and I was in the hospital for like a week or so, that was almost like the bonding factor of like, your aunt has this and she's living with this and you are going to be able to live with that too. So that was like, although really young, I was like, okay, like if she can do it, I can do it.
You still recall that as being helpful?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And like, it wasn't as like alienating as it felt, because it was like, well, Mom, do you have this? No. Well, does Dad have this? No. So I'm like, okay, well then why do I? Trying to wrap your head around that as like a 7-year-old kid, it doesn't it doesn't happen. So
yeah, it's a lot. No, I don't know how you would. Do you have brothers and sisters? I'm sorry, I forget if I asked.
oh no, that's okay. Yeah, I'm an only child, so
okay.
So nothing to reference there either. So
okay, interesting. All right. So diagnosed at 7. There's no way you had a pump 23 years ago, right?
no. So yeah, I grew up during a time where it was all manual injections and manual finger pricks. And that was really, really hard because as a kid to intuitively lean into having to feel yourself, fluctuate levels, and especially just starting out, it was really, really confusing for me.
Are you regular in MPH 23 years ago, or were you using Lantus, Levemir?
Yeah, I was using Lantus and Humalog at the time.
Okay, that's what you started with?
Yep.
Okay. Did they have you counting carbs, or were you doing an exchange diet?
I was counting carbs, yep.
Okay. Do you recall if it worked? Like, do you recall that doctors were happy or not happy with your results? Were your parents? What was it like, dealing with all that?
Yeah, it was really hard. It was like fluctuating. There were times where like things worked out really great. But I think what the most challenging part was just like a kid wanting to be a kid. I remember like not understanding certain holidays, like why can't I have Halloween candy? Why can't I have cake on my birthday?
Right.
Just, hey, like, my friends are having a sleepover and, my parents are like, I don't know if I trust that, you're going to be able to go over there and like make it through the night without like sugar low. Can we trust that the parents know how to handle this? So a lot of that was always really like the harder part for me. And then I know like for the actual, like, I don't know, what am I trying to say? The results themselves,
mm-hmm.
I think it was always mixed because again, like if I was having a hard day or if I'm being a stubborn kid and I'm not trying to finish my dinner, that would mess everything up. And at the time, my parents did the best they could. But again, I was a kid being a kid and I'm running around all day. I'm having a sugar low or I want to go play outside, having a sugar low. And I remember there would be times where, I want to do things that other people were doing. I couldn't do it because it was just going to mess with my sugar a little bit too much. And my parents are like, we can't have you be, out doing that kind of stuff. And it was hard for me to digest because I was like, how come everyone else gets to like do all this stuff and I don't, but I think the return on that was like, I had a really huge sense of like learning responsibility and like learning how important it is to be like intuitive with your body and like how that feels.
Yeah.
And that was like amazingly helpful for like other areas in my life.
Jessica, were your parents scared or were they reacting to some real problems that they were seeing and they just didn't know what to do about them?
I think it was definitely both. I think probably them just being like new parents and then like, trying to juggle this, like, for lack of a better word, a wrench just thrown into like what is probably already hard. So I don't have kids, but I can imagine having a kid's probably really hard. And then having to deal with like an illness like that on top of it was probably just like a lot, just day to day. And there was like, there's times, when I was a kid, I remember having like some really bad lows, some really bad highs. And, there was like laps with them. So, there would be times where my mom would be like, okay, I worked all week. I'm exhausted. We're ordering a pizza. I don't feel like cooking, and then all the problems that can come with that. And then I'm having a sugar high. And I think like anyone to be like perfect parent on it 24/7 is like unrealistic. So I think it was just like trying to find that balance and then trying to also be a parent on top of that, which like made the varying results of like, sometimes my blood sugar would be amazing and my A1C was on point and, everything was like really great. And then I'll have like a streak of like, I'm having a couple bad months and like, I'm kind of off the track here. Like, I remember even just, going through puberty, like that was a huge wrench in my blood sugars because all of a sudden everything was just like, your blood sugar is crazy high or, you all of a sudden could be doing everything perfect and you just wake up one day and it's like, nope, this is not working out. So,
well, I get that. Also, were you an only child because that's what they wanted, or were they having trouble having kids?
I think that's what they wanted. Yeah. Okay. And I think after having me, they were like, I think this is enough on our plate.
Were you a problem, Jessica?
I don't think I was, but I think it was just like probably a lot for them to kind of to juggle at the time. So,
I got you.
and like where I came from, like my parents were together for a little bit after, but a little bit like some time had passed and they ended up, getting divorced and splitting up. So it was like, most of the time I was spending time with mom, and mom was like a single parent and trying to raise me with all the extra things on the track here. So yeah, it was just, I think, a difficult for both of them.
Yeah. No, I take your point. Anyone ever ask you for a tattoo and you did it, but even now in your head, you think they shouldn't have done that? Like if I was in charge, I wouldn't have done that. Like does one pop into your head when I say that?
Yeah, of course. I think there's like tons of examples of this. It could be like a placement thing. It could be like, the couple who just met and they want to get each other's names on them. This was definitely something that like I experienced more so in the beginning of my career when you're not as confident in what you do, you try not to show it. But I think that it could be easy for people to come in and just be like, hey, I want a tattoo. Can you do script? I saw that you had it in your portfolio. I want my girlfriend's name, on my neck. And I'm like, that's not really a good idea. How long have you guys been together? And they're like, a week. I'm like, absolutely not. But when it was, there's so many different personalities that you deal with tattoos. I've tattooed anyone from a lawyer and a doctor to someone who, walks the completely different opposite end of that spectrum.
But what if they're drunk or high? Would you say no then?
Oh, no. Yeah, absolutely not. Like, definitely like liability issues, but also like usually if they're drinking, it can bleed more, and then it's just never, just never gonna like heal right. And I don't need them coming back and being like, I regret this. Can you cover it up? And I'm gonna be like, no.
When I was getting tattoos, it was you brought a bottle for the artist, like and it was just that thing you knew to do. Like it was the strangest thing. I don't even know how I knew to do that.
Yeah.
Then, you're an hour into it and you realize this guy's like, he's getting pretty ripped and you're like, should I really be letting him do this? But then it seemed like it was his happy place. He just was, I don't know if he still does it like that or not. I'm not sure. But I remember like having a thought like an hour into it, like maybe that was a mistake. I shouldn't have brought that.
Yeah,
all worked out.
That's like a very weirdly common thing with like, especially just like, old school tattoo artists. Things are very different before the boom of like the internet, like Instagram and even MySpace. Geez, like tattooing was very much kind of just like a gentleman's handshake. While there's like definitely magic in that, it's obviously great that like you're not going to go into your, local tattoo shop and hopefully find someone who's drunk, ready to tattoo you. I can't guarantee that, but I would hope.
Jessica, it's got to be weed nowadays, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're like, that is what I prefer. Thank you.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, especially if you're on like the West Coast, like I spent a little bit time. I lived out in California for a bit, and I worked at shops, and they'd have a bong on the table, and the artist would finish a tattoo, walk out there and just be like ripping it all day. And I'm like, how do you guys not have a panic attack?
I just can't imagine. So listen, I'm not artistic, and I mean this, like physically I can't draw, or I don't see dimension well, like all that stuff, right? Like shading, I'd be bad at all of it. As a matter of fact, Arden's in a class right now where she had she had to do a self-portrait. It had to be on a big piece of medium. So I think it was like, I don't know, but it must have been like 3 feet by like 2 feet, like a big piece, She's like, I'm in a rush. I don't have a lot of time to do this the way I want to. So I'm going to sit down and get it done. And like a couple of days later, it was finished. And I said, how many times did you start and stop this? And she's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the one. Like, I just did one. And I can't even imagine how to like do that without like making so many mistakes that it has to be crumbled up and thrown away. Like I don't have that ability. And then to take that feeling inside of me and think like to make it permanent on somebody, I'd be out of my mind. I wouldn't be able to do that, but I have no skills either. So my question is what kind of art were you doing before you were tattooing?
So before I was tattooing, I painted every night at my table, and I was lucky enough to know that I wanted to be a tattoo artist. I kind of like grew up around people who had tattoos. So once I realized that you could do that as a job. I wanted tattoos and I wanted to tattoo. So most of the things that I was drawing were already tattoo related.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started tattooing, I was really hyper focused on like American traditional. So anything that I could get my hands on, I would go to the bookstore and I would grab anything that had the word tattoo on it. If it was like a magazine or like an old, Sailor Jerry book, like the little sailor like designs.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just take tracing paper and just trace every page. And then eventually I would take the tracing paper and put it on like a watercolor paper and create these like, what would be now tattoo flash. And then once I realized that I really wanted to be a tattoo artist, I wanted to learn the styles that were like, at the forefront of that. So I could make myself essentially like valuable to a tattoo studio. So, I would take charcoal and I would, try and draw from life. There was a rose or something outside that I saw, and even before the American traditional stuff, I was always drawing, even as a kid. For as far as I can think back, I really enjoyed drawing. It changed when, the thing that I loved doing, that essentially could have been my hobby or therapy, turned into a career.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How long did your apprenticeship last?
So it was about 2.5 years.
Okay.
And so I apprenticed here in Buffalo. And then right after that, I moved to Los Angeles and I was living there for a little bit. And I was a shop manager at a really, really busy street shop. It was like 14 artists. It was like upstairs and downstairs. So answering phones, running all around and setting people up, tearing them down. And then on my off days, I would work like in the valley, taking like in a street shop, just taking like all types of just different walk-ins. That's where I learned how to tattoo, I would say. The apprenticeship was great and working as a studio manager was great, but being thrown into that fire and like dealing with hard personalities and time constraints and challenging areas, that's like really where the pressure like was on me.
Hard personalities sounds like the name of your podcast where you tell a different story about an asshole that you've tattooed every week.
I could probably write a book. Yeah.
If you started doing this at what age? Tell me again. I'm sorry.
That was 2016. So I think I just turned 21, maybe 20 or 21.
Okay. So you were doing it, like you use Control IQ now. Is that right?
I do. Yep.
Right. So you do Control IQ. You have G6 Dexcom because it's still not ready for G7 as of us talking. So, but you're not wearing that 7 years or 8 years ago, right?
No. So I did. Yeah. I was doing manual injections.
And what was that like? Because the work is intense. You can't be stopping and starting, I wouldn't imagine. You're on your feet, then you're sitting down, you're moving your hand constantly. Was it hard on your blood sugar? And how did you handle it without a CGM?
It was horrible.
It was horrible.
Yeah, it was so bad. My blood sugar was out of whack all the time, and it really was horrible on my mental health as well, because I would, as tattooers, we usually start, our lives are polar opposite than like a 9 to 5. So we're starting our first tattoo usually at 12 o'clock. So at this point, I've already had breakfast and I'm, getting ready to have lunch. And I would be like, well, I don't even want to eat lunch because as soon as I sit down to do this tattoo, I know my blood sugar is just going to go really crazy high. And there is no worse thing than like tattooing with high blood sugar. It is so hard. Tattooing in general is pretty tough on your body. I'm not someone that will prioritize money over doing a good tattoo because then it's just my reputation would be shot. So, I can't put my bad day on someone else. So, there's been times, if it's really bad, I have to be like, hey, I can't tattoo you today. Like my blood sugar is out of whack. I can't get it out of the 300s. I feel horrible. I don't want to like do that to you. So that was definitely front and center stage for a lot of the beginning points in my career. And then just running around like crazy that, even polar opposite. Like when I was at that studio as the shop manager, I would be running upstairs, setting a bunch of people up. And then I have to go back downstairs and I'm running up and down stairs like all day, not eating. And then I'm like, oh, of course my blood sugar is low. I didn't have any snacks or anything, but the day is going by so quick and I had so much to do and so much to look after that I would like put myself on the back burner.
Okay.
So once that CGM came out and like I was able to pair that with the pump technology. Like, not only has the like quality of my life gotten better, but also like the quality of my work as well, like in tenfolds. Just having that alarm go off, I'm like, oh, I have to put myself first right now. I can take a pause, and be present with myself. Or if I'm starting a tattoo and I can't rip my gloves off, like at least I know that like if I'm like heading up after a snack or something before I start, I'm going to get that control IQ technology. Whereas before it was just like a slippery slope of just kind of like years and years of like, okay, like what's going to happen. And either I'm not going to eat all day because I'm running around like crazy, or I'm going to be able to like have more time to check into this and be, present with myself.
When you say it's difficult, are we talking about like confusion, like, or foggy head, or being tired or irritable, or what parts of it made it hard for you? I mean, hard enough that you canceled.
So I'm someone that like before control IQ and before having like a CGM, I would definitely run a lot higher. And a lot of that also too is like paired with a lot of my personal anxiety. I could probably speak for every type 1 that like, lows are super scary and they feel really intense, where like I would purposefully almost run a little bit higher when I would go into work and stuff, just because I didn't even want to deal with it. And I'm like, I've got more tokens in the bank here. I can maybe like pop into work at a 200, run around all day, and then like it'll kind of go back into where I want it to go, like 150, 130. But on the flip side of like playing those like dangerous games, and being young and doing that, and less structured, I would just run the risk of running high. So if I was high for too long, if I'm having a high from 9 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon, then I'm like potentially getting ketones, and now I'm having insulin resistance, and then pairing that with like a manual injection, hoping that like it's still not going up per my last like injection. It just was so much harder to handle.
Yeah.
And quite frequently it would just be like, I don't feel good enough. Like, I'm feeling like tired or exhausted, or it's really hard to focus right now because I'm feeling like, just like dehydrated, or like just like very off. And to like be present with someone, make sure that they're like, tattooing hurts. So, a lot of my job too is like making sure that they're as comfortable as they can be in that environment. And then the added layer of like, if I have a really large appointment, sometimes people are coming in getting really meaningful pieces. They want to talk about it. So while I'm tattooing, someone can be like trying to have like a really heart to heart moment with me, or like talk about something that's potentially like traumatic. And if I can't be present in that moment, I'd like never want my client to feel like I don't care about that. So yeah.
It feels to me too that you have like 2 different jobs. If somebody wants to have a heart to heart conversation with you, you have to be able to listen, respond, and continue to make the tattoo the right way.
Yeah.
That's like 2 different thought processes at one time.
Yeah, 100%. And then trying to like play mathematician and hope that like you're feeling your best on top of that, intuitively, without any like.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It was so hard.
Hey, is this a thing you can make I don't know how to put this. Can you make a good living doing this?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a job that like what you put into it's what you're going to get back, so I'm at the point now where I have owned 2 studios. Right now I own my own studio. So I've got some other people working for me. I've been able to teach people. So like, at the position where I'm at, I think that like, I just want to be able to pass that on to other people so they can also have like a really good life. Man, I don't know if I would bother doing anything else. That's why like full circle too, it is so important that I like take care of my body right now so I can do this for as long as I can.
Yeah, you won't be able to do it for a while. Hey, if you have your own place and there are people working there, do they work for you like they're an hourly employee, or do you take a piece of the work they do and you kind of give them the space?
Yeah, it's kind of like a independent contractor type thing. So, there's like commission or there's booth rent. That's typically like how it goes. Booth rent's usually like reserved for people who are like, for lack of a better word, like a veteran, someone who has their own clientele. They've been doing it for 10 years. And they're just kind of looking for a space.
Yeah.
Whereas like most of the situation is like commission based. I prefer commission based with my employees anyways, just because I have a little bit more control over like the quality of tattoos that happen, as well as like the supplies we're using. Like there's no question on like, we're not ordering, for example, our stuff from like Amazon. Like we want to make sure that we're like giving our clients like the best like that they can receive. So like in doing that, like, you know, the commission employees almost essentially pay for that, pay for a booking system, like a shop manager, all of that stuff that kind of just gives us like a little bit more of an edge on like, you know, making the experience better.
Well, I would think also you don't want somebody in there just renting a space, doing a bad job, and then the stink's on you because they're gone and your place is still there, right?
Yeah.
You know, there's hairdressers around here that I've started noticing. They're basically like WeWork hairdressers. And do you know what I mean by that? Like space that you rent. So you see somebody coming to get their haircut, and at the same time they're arriving, the hairdresser's arriving.
Right.
They go into a space that has everything they need. The hairdresser usually has their own like tools with them, and they cut their hair and then they leave again. Like the hairdresser doesn't work there. She or he are just renting the space, and the place is just always open and available. So they like put in a code, they go in and they use the space and they leave again.
Yeah. Yeah. That's similar to kind of like how the booth rent situation works.
Okay.
And like, I can see the appeal to that in the freedom sense, and how like, you know, other artists want those things or like could benefit from those things. But yeah, it's very, very similar, hairdressing and tattooing.
It's crazy. I never knew. Is there a license you need or anything like that?
Yeah. So everywhere is different. You know, some of the more stricter places, for example, is like actually in like Portland. You have to actually go to a tattoo school and have like a certain amount of
Look what they're
hours.
doing. They're ruining everything. I'm just kidding. That sounds like a good idea, actually.
It's a whole thing. And then there's other places where you don't even need a license, which is really strange. Like the health department doesn't get involved
at all.
And that's not at all. Yeah. It's very, very strange. So like, for example, where I'm from, if you have $50, you can go to the health department, take like a 10-question quiz. And if you have a shop, that will let, have you, then you're licensed for that studio.
Jessica, is it a quiz I'm guessing I could get right and I've never tattooed anybody?
Yes, 100%. And, with anything, of course, there's like just so many issues with that. There's no CPR training. There's no bloodborne pathogen training. Like it's wild to me that, if you want to be, like you said, like a hairstylist or a barber, that you have to have a certain amount of hours to like cut hair that grows back. But if someone comes in and they're like, hey, I want my eyelids tattooed, like I can fully do this essentially procedure on somebody that's permanent.
Right. That
could really hurt them if done incorrectly. And it's like totally fine.
Well, yeah, definitely a procedure. I mean, you're really having something. I mean, if you've never had a tattoo before, at this point, I feel like everyone has one, but I guess that's not really true. But it hurts. It doesn't feel good. And it doesn't stop hurting as it goes along. It's just your body becomes more like hamburger as it's happening. So it's a different pain as it gets older.
Yes.
But yeah. There's nothing like, I do know some people who enjoy it. And I'm not here to judge them, as I will admit to you, I like getting a root canal. There's this part, I've had a couple of, I'm so sorry that I have bad teeth, but I've had a couple of root canals in my life. And after they take out the root from the canal, they kind of go in and clean the canal out with this, it almost feels like a burr that's bumpy. And when it's in there, it almost feels like it's bouncing up and down. And people who are bothered by this are having a massive stroke right now as I'm talking about it. But as that thing's in there turning and bumping, I love that feeling.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate all and every pain. So I'm like, you wouldn't think so. I'm pretty much covered head to toe in tattoos, and I've only ever had like wisdom teeth pulled. So I'm like, I don't know.
I sleep through dental procedures.
Yeah, see, I could never.
I lay down and I'm
more
like,
power to you.
I'm like, oh my God, no one's going to bother me. It might be a function of being a parent, Jessica. I'm not sure. But like you're there and you're like, no one's counting on me. Like, I'm here for an hour. I'm here for 90 minutes, whatever. I put my headphones in. I look at them and I go, just jack me open. I'm going to sleep. And they put like this rubber, like, I don't know what to call it, like a wedge in your mouth to hold your mouth open, because I'm not going to be able to hold it open myself, because I'm daddy going bye-bye. I'm taking a nap.
Yeah.
I lay down. I get like I feel them like shaking my shoulder to wake me up. And I'm like, oh, we're done.
Yeah. I get it. I've got some clients like that. I'm like, couldn't be me, but like, again, more power to
You've
you.
had people sleep through a tattoo?
I just got back yesterday. What'd you say?
You've had people sleep through a tattoo?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Wow.
Like people, I mean, they don't like go to sleep, but you can tell they're in that very comfortable, like meditative state where like, you just kind of got to like shake them up and be like, hey, we're finished up here.
Yeah. Hey, what's your line? Racist stuff? Like if somebody came in and wanted something like oddly like just offensive, you'd be like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, no way. Like I even like borderline stuff of like, I'm not doing a Confederate flag. I'm not doing any of that kind of stuff.
And let's be honest, you're in Buffalo. Someone's asked for that, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. No offense to Buffalo.
I luckily have made my studio like pretty loudly known. Like, there's stuff on the door like, don't come in here. We're going to be, racist or homophobic or sex, like any of that stuff. Like, yeah, don't be weird. And that's
just don't be weird and we can get through this.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you charge by the time it takes or by the intricacy of the piece, or do you just charge as much as you think you can get away with?
So it's kind of tough. So since I've been doing this for so long and I have had a lot of like street shop experience, my studio is kind of like a hybrid studio. So although we take walk-ins, we also are mostly by appointment only. Mm-hmm. Right now, I do charge hourly, but it's really tough because I'm a really fast tattooer. So, for example, these people will come in and be like, all right, we're going to start a sleeve. And I'm like outlining a whole sleeve in like 4 hours. And, I'm sure my clients are like loving that they're getting, a lesser expensive experience. Mm-hmm. There's certain things where I'm like, okay, I know this only took us 3 hours, but you need to pay for the fact that, I scheduled you all day for this. So I think it needs to turn into like almost fee. Like you can either pay hourly for this or let's discuss what this is going to look like as a flat rate. Because
may I make a suggestion?
Yeah,
hourly with a minimum of, and then you add the minimum. Then so you look at the piece and you say, look, I got to make $500 here, or I'm screwing myself. So it's you're going to pay my hourly rate, but it's a minimum of this many hours. I don't know how much you get an hour, but then it's a minimum of this many hours. If I get it done sooner, that doesn't matter. You're still paying the minimum. That's how to do it.
See, that's brilliant.
That's what I would do. Okay. Well, I'm glad I could help today.
Yeah.
Control IQ. How long have you been using it?
This is my 4th year with it. I briefly switched to Omnipod for a little while. And this is a like hilarious but scary story. I went to my Endro and I went on to Omnipod and I was like, very excited about it being tubeless, wanted to give it a try. And I remember sitting with her and setting it up and she goes, we don't need to put the safety on this. Like, you've been doing this for so long. I'm sure you got this. And I was like, yeah, you're right. You know what? I got this. Okay. And I'll never forget it. I sat down at dinner, typed in 15 units. And of course it was supposed to be 15 grams of carbohydrate.
You give yourself 15 units instead.
Yep. So, and it was exactly, I'm looking down, my sugar is 140 and, I've got 15 active units in and I'm like, immediately panicking, and I went to like the local hospital and I'm like, hey, like I need to do something now. I don't know what to do. And I'm just watching my Dexcom like go from like, slightly dropping to like double dropping. And I remember the hospital front desk was like, well, here's a sandwich and an apple. And I'm like, that's not going to be enough.
We're too far into this now. But well, why did you not, may I ask, like, why did you not just take your insulin to carb ratio and figure out how many carbs you needed to combat the 15 units?
You know what? I don't know. I think it was just like I was out and I was with some friends and I was just like being, kind of like careless with it. And I was like, like in the middle of dinner, having a conversation and, I'm drinking a cocktail too on top of it. And I was just getting lost in the sauce. And I just, typed in 15, like I normally would on my other pump. And I just, immediately made a mistake. And I was like, oh no.
Do you end up in the hospital because by the time you pulled yourself together to do something, it was kind of too late to do anything else?
Yeah. So I actually walked out of the hospital and I had a friend who's also type 1 and she also tattoos and she put me on to those, I guess a glucagon that like is like the powder that you can like put
back semi.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that honestly saved my life. I grabbed that. I went around and got some juice, and my partner and we called an ambulance, and the ambulance just kind of sat with us, and I really didn't have to do much. And that immediately took care of everything. I think I got to like 50. It was pretty quick. And then I took that and it just turned it right around. And I'm so lucky I had that on me, and my health insurance didn't cover that. I paid out of pocket for it, but
oh, wow.
I'm really happy I got that, because who knows what had happened. I probably would have ended up in the hospital, and it would have been a big thing. And
no, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for having it, especially if you have to pay cash for it, because it's a thing that, people are like, oh, I'm never going to need it. But it's like a seatbelt. When you need it, you don't have time to put it on later. It's like you have to have it ready to go in the moment. And I'm not coming down on you here, but what's your insulin to carb ratio?
So right now it's every 10 units, every 10 grams is 1 unit.
With that math, you would have needed 150 carbs to combat the 15 unit bolus.
Yep. And that would have been really hard.
You don't think you could have got all that in? Are you a tiny person?
Yeah. I'm not a tiny person, but I don't have a huge appetite.
Not a big eater.
So I just feel like, it would have been like, I don't even know. I would have had to been having some like super bad food to like.
Oh, you would have needed like what would you have needed? Like one of those iced coffees with like caramel in it and a slice of pizza. That might have done it for you at that ratio. Yeah.
Like a IV drip of like regular Mountain Dew or something.
Oh, yeah. I haven't had regular Mountain Dew in a long time.
Oh God. Yeah. So like I said, I was lucky to have that, and I grew up with the red one where you had to it was like a manual shot, and I've never used that, knock on wood. And that was my only time in my entire life that I had to do something like that. And after that happened, I was like, I'm going back to my tandem pump.
So that's interesting though, because it didn't really have anything to do with a different pump. It had to do with your uncomfortableness with a newer pump and your nurse practitioner who for some reason didn't think safety settings were important.
Right.
But because what's your biggest bolus usually?
It's a little bit tough for me because again, I don't really eat too much.
Right.
Mostly my meals are around like 30 to 40 grams.
Oh, so you only use like 3 or 4 units at the most.
Yes.
Oh, 15 must have scared the fucking shit out of you. Yeah. I get it now.
I've never seen those numbers down.
I get it now. Okay.
I'm horrified. Yeah. Like double-digit numbers. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pass away.
You must have been like, oh, I just killed myself. Say goodbye, everybody. Yeah, don't know. I get it.
I remember I looked down and again, I was like, my friend was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, oh no.
And she has type 1 as well.
No. I literally, that wasn't the person. I was just with some of my friends. The other person I was talking about was someone who's like, hey, you should carry these around on.
Nice.
And I'm happy because my doctors didn't tell me that was even an option, that I could get those things. Mm-hmm. They just had prescribed me again, the syringe method.
Yeah. Well, which by the way, you're never going to get to use one of those because if I think I'm right that next month they're done. I think Lily's stopping making them this year. I'm pretty sure.
Are they switching over?
I think Lily's getting out of the game.
Oh, wow.
Gvoke HypoPen, Baqsimi. I think those are the 2 retail versions at this point. There might be another mixed one like the red box still from another company, but I think it's one of those companies. Maybe Novo makes one, but I think they're just not common. People don't have them. I think they'll get overtaken in the market is my expectation. So I think you're going to see nasal powder or HypoPen, one of the 2.
Yeah.
You know what? I can't believe I haven't asked you in an hour. 2 things. One of the things I'll ask you in a second, but the one I can't believe I haven't asked you is I actually have an episode with a paramedic, I think, because at one point, people love to share their diabetes tattoos online. I'm sure you're aware of that. And
oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's cool. I think some of them have some really great tattoos, but some of them are counting on their tattoos as an indicator to paramedics or, medical people that they have type 1 diabetes. And I thought, I wonder if that's really a good idea. So I had this paramedic on and she said, we are trained not to look at that stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. And she told me, if I remember the episode correctly, it's jewelry around your wrist mostly is the best place, maybe a necklace. But you could have, hey, I have type 1 diabetes written on your forearm, and a paramedic might never look at it.
Yeah.
So do you know
Yeah.
that? And do you tell people that?
I've actually never weirdly had anybody come in to get any sort of medical ID tattoo,
No kidding.
but I know that people do get them, but I didn't know that paramedics were trained to not look at it. I guess I can understand probably why, because what if it was a tattoo for someone else?
Well, yeah.
And what if they treat you for something you don't have, I guess, that would be horrible.
I never thought of it that way, Jessica. But I now I see what you're saying. You're like, oh no, we can't do anything. This lady has blah blah blah, and you're like, no, that's
Right.
actually that was for her sister. And no,
Right.
oh, I get you now. Yeah, I forget her exact explanation, but she said, do not count on tattoos to be seen by emergency services people. And I was like, oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe that.
Mhm.
And again, too, I weirdly don't, like I said, I'm covered head to toe and I don't have anything like that. And I also don't wear anything. I mean, I know I have my phone and stuff like that has that option and stuff. And I have, my pump and stuff like that on my arms. But yeah, that's so strange. I didn't even think about that. But I have seen them. I'm in a lot of the groups online and stuff like that. And, people definitely have them. But if they do, I'm going to let them know that. So
Oh, cool. So you said you're covered head to toe?
Yep.
And it sounds like you're dating, but I feel like I heard you say partner at some point, but
Yeah.
have you ever had an experience where a potential mate was either turned on or turned off by them?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's sought out sometimes and vice versa. There's tons of things. A lot of people don't like tattoos for personal reasons or religious reasons and stuff like that. I think my partner's also really covered in tattoos. She's not a tattoo artist, but she has a bunch of tattoos on her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I don't know, it's so strange because I feel like I live in my small bubble and I hang out with other tattoo artists and I'm at my studio all day. And if I leave, I go do a guest spot around other tattoo artists. So to me, we all kind of look the same. I'll go out in public in certain places if I go to dinner or I'm traveling or something like that. I realized quickly how tattooed I am. I'm like, oh, wow. My my world is I've created my world in this way, but I realized pretty quickly, that I look different than a lot of the other people around. I have face tattoos and, my neck is tattooed and my hands are tattooed. Even if I'm really covered up and stuff at home, people see them.
Yeah, it's interesting when it's your world, you don't think anything of it. But I just saw a meme the other day that was basically, it was not basically, this is what it was. It was this guy with all these kind of I'm going to tell you they were bad face tattoos. And in the top of the meme, it said something like in 1986, this was a crackhead. And then on the bottom, the same picture. And it says in 2023, this is a famous singing artist.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's right. it's actually
yeah, 100%. It's so strange. And
Right.
even when I started tattooing, you did not tattoo your hands, face, and neck. That was morale that was even taught on to me. If a young kid comes into my studio who doesn't have a career that is, something in the arts, I'm probably not going to slap a big tattoo on the side of their face. I'm here to kind of honor these people, and not that I'm here to tell anybody what to do or
Right.
Dictate their body and anything like that. But I have to kind of be almost like a gatekeeper in that sense. And it's again, I'm not here to tell anybody anything, but I don't want to put something on someone that they're going to regret or a bad job. So
Yeah.
the person who's coming in, they're like, hey, I want my brand new girlfriend's name on the top of my eyebrow. I'm like, yeah, it's not happening,
Not from me.
or just having them think a little extra step on that hand tattoo that they think they want so badly.
Also, there's a lot of, I was going to say there's places you can't really do tattoos because they wear off. You can't do the sole of your foot. But first of all, it feels like, I think that would really hurt. But if you did that, wouldn't the skin just regenerate so quickly that it would go away eventually? And isn't that true on your palms of your hands and other places too?
Yeah, so I actually have my palms done, and they stay. So
Okay.
there is a way to getting them in, and it's basically we call it sewing it in, and it's essentially almost like a controlled blowout. So it's really horrible to receive getting done, and they don't always stay. Everyone's body metabolizes things differently.
Interesting.
So that's why you see in tattooing a lot of different gimmicky stuff that doesn't make sense. Like there's creams that can remove your tattoos, and it's just like scientifically not even possible.
Right.
So like stuff like that, like, getting it to stay, like, yeah, you can get a palm tattoo or maybe a tattoo on the bottom, but that might require you to go through and do it in multiple sessions so the body can like build up that ink that like, each time it's almost like another layer that gets left. But luckily for me, when I did my palms and my hands and stuff like that, it stayed the first time. I didn't have to go back to do it, but it was horrible to get. And like my healing sucks 10 times worse than like a regular person just from being a type 1 diabetic. So, there's been tattoos I've gotten through the years that just haven't been super great to heal. And even to this day, the one area that like I don't have tattooed are the tops of my feet. And that's just because I'm so nervous about, just the potential risk of that.
Have you noticed healing? Does it change when your A1C is more stable and lower?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And since, again, like the Control IQ technology and the, having the pump and stuff like that, like my A1C's dropped like to almost, perfect range. So like, I'm like, okay, I'm getting all the tattoos I like, have like considered not getting and
Now's
stuff. And I have like, some challenging areas, but yeah.
My first idea for a tattoo was to have the sole of a sneaker tattooed on the bottom of my foot.
Oh my goodness. That would hurt so bad.
I said to the guy, here are my ideas. And when I said that one, he goes, don't do that. And I was like, oh, okay. He goes, that'll hurt a lot. And I was like, okay. But it was my first like odd thought. I was like, what if I put the sole of a sneaker on the bottom of my foot? That'd be weird. But I don't know. Like, I just don't have like, I don't think I'm a person who looks like they have tattoos, first of all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not. I shouldn't say I think I don't look. I know I don't look like somebody who has tattoos. So often when people see them, they're kind of like stunned that I have them at all. And I have a giant like circuit board on my shoulder.
Yeah.
That looks like it's like under the skin kind of feeling. Like it looks like the skin's burned around it and it's like exposing this hole in my shoulder that's a circuit board. If you told me to go get another tattoo right now, I would never be able to. There's no way I would think of anything except like my kids' names.
Yeah.
And if you asked me, hey, here's your tattoos that you've been living with for 33 years, would you get them again? I'd be like, probably not. Because like I'm
that's
different.
Totally
now.
fair.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Hey, if I came into you and I said, I want authentic prison tattoos, could you make them look like prison tattoos?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's like definitely a style.
Is it really?
Yeah, absolutely. There's all different types of that. There's like, if you wanted them to look really like they were like stick and poked in, that's definitely a style. Or if you're like, I want that like single needle fine line, like, full black and gray back piece with like prison imagery, you could do that too. So yeah, definitely.
How many times have you tattooed the word Metallica on somebody?
I think maybe twice.
Oh, just twice? That's not bad.
It's not too bad, no. In my town, we had like mandatory Metallica from like 5 to 6 on the radio growing up. So we have lots of Metallica fans here.
Yeah, the little Ride the Lightning guy with the electric in his hair. You must have done one of those by now, right?
Yeah. Like, yep, with the like M.
Yes. Yeah, no, you and I are thinking the same thing. I just want to say before I forget, episode 387 with Ginger Locke, who's a paramedic, it's called Somebody Call 911, and it's all about how she identifies type 1s in emergency situations. So it's actually a really cool episode. But anyway, okay, so Jessica, I got fascinated by talking to you about your tattoos and everything and your job. So is there anything about diabetes in general that we didn't talk about that you wanted to bring up today?
I don't think so. Yeah. I feel like we nailed all the points, which was just like, like what it was like working, with it before. And, the paramedic thing was so awesome to know because I had no idea. So yeah, I feel like there's tons of really great things in here shared. So. Oh,
I do too. I really do. Do you want to share your shop or a handle online where people could find you or anything?
Yeah, definitely. All my stuff is just through my Instagram. So if you go to, it's at Jess Fox Tattoos. You can find all of my stuff there, and there's like links with everything. You can see my work.
All right, I'm going to look at it right now. Hold on. JESSFOX. I wish I wasn't able to say this, but I'm so pleased with myself that I spelled tattoos correctly. I can't even, because there's something about the double T and the double O that my brain's like, no. You're doing it wrong. But I got it. I got it right on the first shot. I just want to say that. Oh, this one's so cool.
I get that all the time. Like when I'm like paying a bill or like giving my email to like somewhere, they're like always spelling it wrong. So
Yeah.
you did great.
Thank you. Oh no, I was really pleased with myself. Then so much so that I said it. The tattoo with the girl with the rose in her hair, is that somebody specific or is it just art?
It's actually based off a sculpture. So it was like a pose from a sculpture, and then just like a flower with like a little like ornamental thing on the bottom. And that's so if you look, most of my work's like a lot of like dark art and black and gray, but as of recently I've been having a lot of fun dipping my foot into like color neo traditional. So
nice. Also very smart of you to take video of them, because until Arden started in art school, I didn't realize that being sent like a static flat image of something really is not the same as even just somebody taking a camera and just kind of rolling it around a little bit so you can see a little more like from different perspectives. When she was gone the first time, I remember her sending a picture of something, and when she brought it home, I was like, oh my God, it looks so much different in person than it did it like statically. And I thought that was cool the way you were doing it with the camera right there.
Thank you.
I know, actually. Oh, look at all this. You're terrific. Good for you. This is wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Do you still use deodorant to pull the ink off of the paper, off the tracing paper?
Yeah. So it's definitely like, it's the same stuff, but formulated just in a more like sterile way. So
they used to
like
just use deodorant.
Yeah, like a speed stick. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I remember the first time it happened to me. I was like, what's going on right now?
Yep.
Wow, this is wonderful.
But yeah.
Look at you.
They just put a fancy label on it and sell it.
Is the girl with the snake on her leg, is that the girl you're with, or are you just posing with something you did?
Depends on what photo. If it was like,
she's
is it
going
like
upstairs.
Me standing in the stairs?
She's going up the stairs. You're seated on the stairs.
Yep. Yeah, that's my partner.
Oh, lovely. Oh, look. Did you do this work on her or no?
The snake I didn't, but the other leg we just started like this year. So we're in the middle of kind of like working on a really huge leg sleeve.
Interesting. Oh, this is like the dating equivalent of making somebody pregnant. They can't get away from you after you've done something like this to them.
That's right.
Jessica's like, you can leave if you want, but every time you look at your leg, you're going to remember me. So, oh my God. All right. Well, I really do appreciate you doing this. Can I ask you one last question? What made you want to come on the podcast?
Yeah, I love all your work. And like I said, I travel a lot for work. So a lot of the times, like, I feel like a lot of diabetes education comes from other people and just like different experiences that they have gone through. And, there's been things that I've dealt with, like specifically, like I was having a lot of stomach issues for a little while. And that's like how I found you folks, and just hearing your stories and everything you were going through as a parent and stuff like that. And it's been so helpful for me again, and learning all different types of stuff that like, I was like, man, I would love to talk to you someday. So
wow, that's so nice of you. Well, first of all, Jessica, let me tell you this before I answer my follow-up question. My wife just texted me, I was pizza for lunch. I'm going to assume she meant I want pizza for lunch. And I've responded right now, I was a monkey in my dream. Let her try to figure out why the hell I said that. Okay. Oh, love that. Could we call your episode I Was a Monkey? No, it's too long. So what was wrong with your stomach? You were having digestion issues?
Yeah, I don't know. It was really strange. I took a trip to Iceland, and it was like super awesome. I came home, and like for 6 months I had really bad stomach issues, and my doctor was like, you must have got something from there. Like, it had to have been from there, And it was like every time I ate, just everything was like really horrible. And it was just like the blanket statements all the time, like must be, gastritis or gastroparesis or diet. Yeah. And nothing was helpful. And then you had a episode on here with a couple different things. It was like supplements. I can't remember what it was. It was like one of the ones.
It's called Arden Supplements or something like that, right? That episode. Yeah.
Yep. And I did that, and it was actually incredibly helpful. And then cool. You had a couple, and like I had been going for months, seeing specialists and everything, and like nothing was helping me. And it was like, okay, I need to talk to somebody who like maybe understands it in a way that like, what I deal with on a day-to-day basis. Cause it just was, it like the whole situation that I was going through with them, they would just kind of just prescribe me like, here's an antacid, try that. Here's this, try that. And like nothing was helping. And I was like, I think this, like there's a root at this problem, you know?
I'll get a guy on a podcast to help me.
Right. Yeah. And it's like so crazy because I was just like, well, I was like, well, what else do I have to lose? Like, I can take a supplement and maybe my stomach's going to hurt. Who cares? My stomach already hurts.
Yeah, no
So,
kidding. Oh, I'm good. So what did you do? Magnesium?
yep.
Digestive enzyme?
Yeah. It was the one, I'll never forget it because it tastes horrible. It was the one with the boar bile in it.
Oh, yeah. You're not supposed to smell them, sweetheart. And you wet your mouth real good, throw it in, just boom, knock it back as fast as possible. Yeah, they put poop in them. There's poop in them. So
yep.
you got to be careful.
So whatever bacteria or whatever I put back into my stomach, I think it just totally made everything better. And the whole time I was like, there's no way I picked up anything in like another like country. Like it just, it wasn't like I was having all this exotic food.
Yeah,
or
like
anything.
maybe your
So
digestion slowed down or something. But although I did Google Reykjavik food poisoning, and there's a lot on Reddit. So
maybe.
Iceland issues urgent warning as frozen items. There's a lot. Don't Google Reykjavik food poisoning because you're going to see that maybe something you ate killed your gut bacteria or something like that.
Yeah, it could have been. So
I'm going to do so much more around some supplements in the coming months. My hardest problem to defeat is to get because I either have to have the experience on my own enough that I'm comfortable speaking about it, or I need to get somebody on that knows what they're talking about. But there's so much bro science around supplements that it's hard to know if people really know what they're talking about or if they've Googled something and now they're trying to make money off of people. So it's a hard thing to talk about, but it's right here on my whiteboard. Where's my whiteboard? Scatterbrain ideas. Oh, do a series called Bitch Sessions where I have type 1s come on and I give each one 10 minutes to complain about diabetes. That's one of my ideas.
I love that.
That's going to be great. By the way, no one steal that. Because if I hear this on another podcast, I'm going to clip your podcast. I'm going to put my audio of me saying on it. I'm going to call you out online. And then I have like grand rounds. We're working on that now. But supplements and nutrition is on my list with like a big line underneath of it. Because I know if you get good information, it can really help you. So anyway, I'm glad you found it and that it was helpful. And thanks for sticking around and continuing to listen. I appreciate that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Hold on a second for me. A huge thanks to Touched by Type 1. Don't forget to head to touchedbytype1.org and get your free tickets to the big event. touchedbytype1.org. Today's episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the Dexcom G7, which now integrates with the Tandem T-Slim X2 system. Learn more and get started today at dexcom.com/juicebox. Jalen is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and look out online for the hashtag Medtronic Champion. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy my full conversation with Jalen coming up in just a moment. Thanks for hanging out until the end. Now you're going to hear my entire conversation with Jalen. Don't forget medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform.
My name is Jalen Mayfield. I am 29 years old. I live in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I am originally from Waynesboro, Mississippi. So I've kind of traveled all over. I've just landed here in the Midwest and haven't left since.
Nice. How old were you when you were diagnosed with type 1 diabetes?
I was 14 years old when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
15 years ago. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. 14 years old. What are you like? Do you remember what grade you were in?
I actually do because we have like an 8th grade promotion. So I had just had 8th grade promotion. So I was going straight into high school. So it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult going into high school with this new thing?
It was unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school with, our community. We brought 3 different schools together. So I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was.
Did you even know, or were you just learning at the same time?
I honestly was learning at the same time. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling almost over an hour to the nearest, pediatrician, like endocrinologist for children, So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Was there any expectation of diabetes? Does somebody else in your family have type 1?
No, I was the first one to have type 1 in my family.
And do you have children now?
I do not.
No. Do you think you will one day?
Still thinking about it, but right now I've just been traveling, focusing on my career and myself. So,
what do you do? What's your career?
Yeah, so I am a marketing leasing specialist for a student housing company. So we oversee about 90 properties throughout the US. So I've been working for them for about 8 years now.
And you get to travel a lot in that job?
Yes, I experience a lot of travel. It's fun, but also difficult, especially with all your type 1 diabetes supplies and all your electronics. So it's a bit of a hassle sometimes.
Mm-hmm. What do you find that you absolutely need with you while you're traveling, diabetes-wise?
I have learned my biggest thing I need is some type of glucose. I have experienced lows, whether that's on a flight, traveling, walking through the airport. And I used to always experience just being nervous to ask for some type of snack or anything. So I felt like I needed to always have something on me. And that has made my travel a lot easier.
Okay. So growing up in this small town, what was your initial challenge during diagnosis? And what other challenges did you find along the way?
Yeah, I think the initial one, I felt isolated. I had no one to talk to that it was experiencing what I was going through. People would say, oh, I know this is like hard for you, but I was like, you really don't. Like, I just felt lonely. I didn't know, people were watching everything I did. It was like, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. I felt like all of my childhood had been, I don't even remember what it was like for life before diabetes at this point, because I felt like that's only thing I could focus on was trying to do a life with type 1 diabetes.
When you found yourself misunderstood, did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just, kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it unless I absolutely had to.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I think I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college and moving to an even bigger town, that's where I finally found those people where I was like, okay, there's a lot of other people that have type 1 diabetes. And, there's a community out there which I had never experienced before.
Is college where you met somebody with diabetes for the first time, or just where you met more people with different ways of thinking?
So I met my first person with diabetes, actually my freshman year of high school. There was only one other person, and he had it since he was a kid, like young, since we were like maybe born, or like right after that time frame. So that was the only other person I knew until I got to college and I started meeting other people. I was a member of the band and I was an RA. So I was like, okay, there's a small handful of people also at my university. But then once I moved to St. Louis, and a lot of my friends I met were like med students and they were young professionals. And that's where I started really getting involved with one of my really close friends to this day. He was also type 1 diabetic. And I was like, that's who introduced me to all these different types of communities and technologies, and which is really what helped jumpstart my learning more with type 1 diabetes.
Do you think, there was that one person in high school, but you were young. Do you really think you were ready to build a relationship and around diabetes, or did you even know the reason why that would be important at the time?
I didn't. I honestly didn't think about it. I just was like, oh, there's another person in my class that's kind of going through the same thing as I am, but they've also had it a lot longer than I have. So they've kind of got it down. They don't really talk about it. And I was like, well, I don't really have much to connect with them. Connect with them on.
Yeah. No. So now once your world expands as far as different people, different backgrounds, different places in college, you see the need to connect in real life, but there's still only a few people, but there's still value in that, right?
Correct.
What do you think that value was at the time?
I think it was just making me feel like I was just a normal person. I just wanted that. And I needed to know that there was other people out there with type 1 diabetes experiencing the same type of, thoughts that I was having.
When were you first introduced to the Medtronic Champions community?
Yeah. So about 2 years ago, I was, becoming more, I was looking around and I stumbled upon the Medtronic community and I was like, this is something I really, really, I kind of need. All throughout these years, I was, afraid to show my pump. I would wear long sleeves, like didn't want people to see my CGMs because I didn't want people to ask me questions. And, I just felt so uncomfortable. And then I noticed seeing these people really in the Medtronic community, they embraced it. You could see them. They weren't afraid to show it. And that was something I was really looking forward to.
How is it knowing that your diabetes technology is such an important part of your health and your care and having to hide it? What did it feel like to have to hide that diabetes technology, and how did it feel to be able to kind of let it go?
I refused to go anywhere. And I would run to the bathroom. I just didn't want to do it in public because I felt like people were watching me. And that was just one of the hardest things I was trying to overcome. I was fresh out of college, going into the young professional world. So, going out on work events and things like that, I just didn't think to have it out because I was so afraid. But then once I did start, embracing it and showing it, that's when the curiosity came. And it was actually genuine questions and people wanting to know more about the equipment that I'm on and how does this work and what does this mean and things like that, which it kind of inspired me because I was like, okay, people actually do want to understand what I'm experiencing with type 1 diabetes.
What did you experience when the internet came into play and now suddenly as easy as a hashtag and you can meet all these other people who are living with diabetes as well? Can you tell me how that is either different or valuable, I guess, compared to meeting a few people in real life?
Absolutely. I think if you look back from when I was first diagnosed to now, I would have never thought of searching anything for someone with type 1 diabetes. And now it's like, it's all I see. You can easily search Medtronic Champions and you see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that kind of just motivates me, and which is how I've kind of came out of my shell and started embracing more and posting more on my social media about how I live with type 1 diabetes. And I think that's something that I hope can inspire everyone else.
What was it like having more personal, intimate relationships in college with type 1?
I think it was kind of hard to explain, just for example, no one really understands what a low is. And I think that was a very hard thing for me to explain. It can happen in any moment and I'm sweating. I'm just really not all there. And I'm trying to explain hey, this is what's going on. I need your help. And I think that was something that was hard for me to, I did talk to people about it. So when this happened, they were like, oh, what's going on with you? I'm like, I'm actually a type 1 diabetic. Yeah. This is what's going on. I need your help.
What about once you've had an experience like that in front of someone, was it always bonding, or did it ever have people kind of step back and be maybe more, leery of your relationship?
After I would tell someone I had type 1 diabetes after some type of event or anything, they were kind of more upset with me that I didn't tell them up front. Because they were like, I care about you as a person. I would have loved to know this about you. It's not anything you should have to hide from me. And I think that was a lot of the realization that I was going through with a lot of people.
Okay. Let me ask you this. So now we talked about what it was like to be low and to have that more kind of emergent situation. But what about when your blood sugar's been high or stubborn and you're not thinking correctly, but it's not as obvious, maybe to you or to them?
Yeah. So I go through my same experiences when I have high blood sugars. I can tell from my coworkers, for example, I didn't really talk to, I'll backtrack. When I visit multiple sites for work, I usually don't announce it. And so sometimes I'm working throughout the day. I might have snacked, forgot to take some insulin, and my blood sugar is running high. And I'm a little bit more irritable. I'm all over the place. And I'm like, let me stop. Hey, guys, I need to take some insulin. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you guys I'm a diabetic. So you may be wondering why I'm kind of just a little bit snippy, so I like to make sure I do that now going forward, because that's something I noticed and it was kind of hindering me in my career because I was, getting irritable because I'm working nonstop and I'm forgetting to take a step back and focus on my diabetes.
Right. Hey, with the advent of new technology like Medtronic CGM and other diabetes technology, can you tell me how that's improved your life and those interactions with people?
Yeah, I can. I feel confident knowing that it's working in the background. As someone, and I've always adamantly said it, I have been someone that's really bad with counting my carbs. So sometimes I kind of undershoot it because I'm scared, but it allows me to just know that, hey, it's got my back if I forget something. And I think that allows me to have a quick lunch, and then I'm able to get back into the work day because it's such a fast-paced industry that I work in. So sometimes it is easy to forget. And so I love that I have that system that's keeping track of everything for me.
Let me ask you one last question. When you have interactions online with other people who have type 1 diabetes, what social media do you find the most valuable for you personally? Like, what platforms do you see the most people and have the most good interactions on?
Yeah, I've had tremendous interactions on Instagram. That's where I've kind of seen a lot of other diabetics reach out to me and ask me questions. I've commented like, hey, you're experiencing this too. But I've recently also been seeing TikToks and, finding on that side of it. I didn't, see the videos and the fun videos. And I'm like, I would love to do stuff like that, but I just never have the courage. So I'm seeing people make like just the fun engagement videos now, which I love, really bringing that awareness to diabetes.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? Maybe you don't know this, but there's some sort of an age cutoff somewhere where there is an entire world of people with type 1 diabetes existing on Facebook that don't go into TikTok or Instagram and vice versa.
Yeah.
And I do think it's pretty broken down by, when that platform was most popular for those people by age. But your younger people, I'm acting like I'm 100 years old, but younger people seem to enjoy video more.
Yes, I think it's just because it's something you see. And so it's like, and I think the one thing, and obviously it's a big stereotype around diabetes, is you don't look like you have diabetes. And that's something I always faced. And so when I see other people that are just, normal, everyday people, and I'm like, they have type 1 diabetes just like me. They're literally living their life, having fun. That's just something you want to see it because you don't get to see people living their everyday lives with diabetes. And I think that's something I've really enjoyed.
Yeah. What are your health goals? When you go to the endocrinologist and you make a plan for the next few months, what are you hoping to achieve and where do you struggle and where do you see your successes?
I'll be honest, I was not someone who was as, involved in my diabetes. I wasn't really focused on my health. And that was something that, you go into an endocrinologist and you get these results back and it's not what you want to hear. It makes you nervous. It makes you scared. And so I personally, for myself, I was like, this is my chance to change. I know there's people that are living just like me, everyday lives, and they can keep their A1Cs and their blood sugars under control. How can I do this? So I go in with, I would like to see it down a certain number of points each time. I would love for my doctor to be like, hey, I see you're entering your carbs. I see you're not having lows. You're not running high too often. That's my goal. And I've been seeing that. And that's what motivates me every time I go to the endocrinologist, where I don't dread going. It's like an exciting visit for me.
So you like to set a goal for yourself and then for someone to acknowledge it, to give you kind of that energy to keep going for the next goal.
Yeah, I feel as a type 1 diabetic for me, and it's a lot to balance. It's a hard journey.
Yeah.
And so I want someone, when I go in, I want to be able to know like, hey, I see what you're doing. Let's work together to do this. You don't want to be put down like, you're doing horrible. It's not going to motivate you because you're already fighting a tough battle.
Right.
So just having that motivation and acknowledging the goods and also how we can improve, that's what really has been the game changer for me in the past 2 years.
Jalen, I appreciate you spending this time with me. This was terrific. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
If you enjoyed Jalen's story, check out medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox. Once there was a time when I just told people, if you want a low and stable A1C, just listen to the Juicebox Podcast. But as the years went on and the podcast episodes grew, it became more and more difficult for people to listen to every one. So I made the Diabetes Pro Tip Series. This series is with me and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's also a registered and licensed dietitian and a type 1 herself for over 30 years. And I, of course, am the father of a child who was diagnosed at age 2 in 2006. The Pro Tip series begins at episode 210 with an episode called Newly Diagnosed or Starting Over. And from there, all about MDI, pre-bolusing, insulin pumping, bumping and nudging, variables, exercise, illness, injuries, surgeries, glucagon, long-term health, bumping and nudging, how to explain type 1 to your family, postpartum, honeymoon, transitioning, all about insulin, temp basals. These are all different episodes. Setting your basal insulin, fat and protein, pregnancy, the glycemic index and load, and so much more, like female hormones and weight loss. Head now to juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up in the menu at the top and click on Diabetes Pro Tip. Or if you're in the private Facebook group, there's a list of these episodes right in the featured tab. Find out how I help keep my daughter's A1C between 5.2 and 6.2 for the last 10 years without diet restrictions. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Start listening today. It's absolutely free. If you're not already subscribed or following in your favorite audio app, please take the time now to do that. It really helps the show. And get those automatic downloads set up so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. WrongWayRecording.com.